Marcus Chen walked through the busy terminal at JFK Airport with his backpack slung over one shoulder. He wore his favorite gray hoodie and comfortable jeans. After working 16 hours straight on his company's latest project, he wanted nothing more than to sleep on the flight to London. The hoodie was soft and warm, perfect for a long flight. He had built his technology company from nothing. 12 years ago, he started in a small apartment with just a laptop and an idea. Now his artificial intelligence company was worth billions. His software helped hospitals diagnose diseases faster. It helped cities manage traffic better. It helped millions of people every day. But Marcus never forgot where he came from. He still preferred comfortable clothes over fancy suits. He still carried his own bags. He still flew commercial, even though he could afford a private jet. The gate agent scanned his boarding pass and smiled. "Have a great flight, sir." Marcus nodded and walked down the jet bridge. The airplane was huge, a Boeing 777 that would carry over 300 passengers across the Atlantic Ocean. He had paid for a first-class seat because he needed to sleep. Tomorrow morning he had meetings with investors in London, important meetings that could help expand his company to Europe. Marcus stepped onto the plane. The first-class cabin was on his left. Wide leather seats, extra space, soft lighting. He turned left and started walking toward his seat. Row 3, seat A, window seat. His favorite, a flight attendant, appeared in front of him. She was tall with blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her name tag read, Rebecca Walsh. She looked at Marcus and held up her hand. "Excuse me, sir," Rebecca said. Her voice was sharp. "I think you're in the wrong section." Marcus stopped walking. He looked at her, confused. "I'm in first class," he said calmly. "Seat 3A, Rebecca shook her head. "Can I see your boarding pass?" Marcus pulled out his phone. He showed her the mobile boarding pass on his screen. It clearly showed his name, seat number, and the words first class at the top. Rebecca looked at it for a long moment. Her eyes narrowed. "This must be a mistake," she said. "Are you sure you didn't book economy?" Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. He had flown hundreds of times. He had been in first class many times. Nobody had ever questioned his ticket before. "There's no mistake," he said. His voice stayed calm, but inside he felt a familiar anger building. "I purchased this ticket 3 days ago." Rebecca crossed her arms. "These tickets are very expensive. Are you sure someone didn't upgrade you by mistake?" Behind Marcus, other passengers were starting to board. They shuffled and waited. A man in a business suit cleared his throat impatiently. Marcus could feel their eyes on his back. He could hear their whispers. "I bought this ticket myself," Marcus said. Each word came out slowly and clearly. "For $3,000. There is no mistake." Rebecca's face hardened. "Sir, I need you to step aside. You're blocking other passengers." Marcus didn't move. He had every right to be here. He had paid for his seat. He had his boarding pass. But he knew what was really happening. He had experienced it before, just never on an airplane. The assumptions, the doubts, the belief that someone who looked like him couldn't possibly belong in first class. An older white man in an expensive suit pushed past Marcus. Rebecca's face immediately brightened. "Welcome aboard, sir," she said warmly to the man. "Let me help you find your seat." She didn't ask for his boarding pass. She didn't question whether he belonged there. The man walked to seat 2B and sat down without any problems. Another passenger came behind him, a white woman with designer luggage. Rebecca smiled at her too. "Good evening, ma'am. Welcome to first class, no questions, no demands to see tickets." The woman found her seat in row 4. Marcus watched this happen. His jaw tightened. The pattern was clear. Everyone else was welcomed. Only he was stopped. Only he was questioned. "Sir, I'm going to need you to move to economy," Rebecca said firmly. "If you keep blocking the aisle, we'll have to remove you from the flight." "Remove me?" Marcus's voice rose slightly. "I have a valid ticket. I've shown you my boarding pass. What more do you want?" A younger flight attendant, a man with red hair, came over. He looked nervous. "Is there a problem here?" "This passenger is claiming he has a first-class ticket," Rebecca said. "But I think there's been a mistake." The red-haired attendant looked at Marcus's phone. He saw the boarding pass. "It looks valid to me," he said quietly. Rebecca shot him a sharp look. "Daniel, can you check with the gate? I want to make sure this is legitimate." Marcus couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Legitimate? You've seen my boarding pass. It has my name, my seat number, What else do you need? More passengers were backing up in the aisle now. An elderly white woman with pearls around her neck spoke up loudly. What's the delay? Some of us have connections to make. Rebecca turned to her. I'm so sorry, ma'am. We're just sorting out a ticketing issue. Well, sort it out faster, the woman said rudely. She looked at Marcus with cold eyes. Some people try to sneak into first class. It's shameful. Marcus felt heat rise in his face. He wanted to tell this woman exactly who he was. He wanted to tell her that he probably had more money in his checking account than she had in her entire net worth, but that wasn't the point. He shouldn't have to prove his worth. His ticket should be enough. I'm not sneaking anywhere, Marcus said clearly, looking at the woman. I paid for my seat, like everyone else here. Daniel, the red-haired attendant, touched Rebecca's arm. Rebecca, maybe we should just let him sit. The computer shows his ticket is valid. Rebecca pulled her arm away. I'm following protocol. When something seems wrong, we investigate. That's our job. What seems wrong? Marcus asked. His patience was running out. Tell me exactly what seems wrong about my ticket. Rebecca's face flushed red. Sir, don't take that tone with me. I'm asking a simple question, Marcus said. My boarding pass is valid. The computer confirms it. Other passengers boarded without being questioned. So what specifically seems wrong? The cabin fell silent. Everyone was watching now. Some passengers had their phones out. Marcus noticed at least 3 people recording the interaction. Good, he thought. Let them record it. Let them see exactly what was happening. Rebecca's mouth opened and closed. She couldn't answer his question. Or rather, she couldn't say the real answer out loud. The real answer was written in every assumption she had made, every doubt she had voiced, every passenger she had let through without question while stopping only him. I'm calling the captain, Rebecca finally said. She turned and walked toward the cockpit. Marcus stood in the aisle, his backpack still on his shoulder. 20 minutes had passed since he boarded. 20 minutes of being questioned. 20 minutes of being doubted. 20 minutes of being treated like a criminal for trying to sit in a seat he had purchased. He looked around the first-class cabin. Every seated passenger was white. Every single one. They all looked away when he met their eyes. Except for one man, an Asian man in his 50s sitting in seat 5C. The man caught Marcus's eye and shook his head slowly. A look of understanding passed between them. The man knew. He had probably experienced something similar himself. Marcus took a deep breath. This flight was going to be long, very long, but he wasn't going anywhere. He had every right to be here, and he was going to make sure everyone knew it. The captain emerged from the cockpit 5 minutes later. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had probably flown this route 1,000 times. He looked at the crowded aisle and sighed. Rebecca stood beside him, whispering urgently. Marcus watched her point at him several times. The captain walked over. Sir, I'm Captain Morrison. What seems to be the problem? Marcus appreciated that the captain at least asked him first. There's no problem on my end, Marcus said calmly. I have a valid first-class ticket. I've shown my boarding pass multiple times, but your flight attendant refuses to let me take my seat. Captain Morrison held out his hand. May I see your boarding pass? Marcus showed him the phone screen again. The captain studied it carefully. He pulled out his own phone and appeared to check something. Marcus assumed he was verifying the ticket in the airline system. After a minute, the captain looked up. Your ticket is valid, he said simply. Relief washed through Marcus. Finally, someone with authority who used common sense. But Rebecca stepped forward. Captain, don't you think it's strange? He's dressed so casually, and he has no luggage except that backpack. First-class passengers usually have proper luggage. Marcus couldn't believe what he was hearing. Now she was judging his clothes, his luggage. I travel light, he said. That's not a crime. And I dress comfortably for long flights. Also not a crime. The captain looked uncomfortable. Rebecca, if his ticket is valid, I've been doing this job for 15 years, Rebecca interrupted. I can tell when something isn't right. Maybe his ticket was upgraded by mistake. Maybe there was a computer error. We should double-check with the gate before we take off. The computer already confirmed it, Daniel said quietly. He still looked nervous, but at least he was trying to help. I checked twice, Rebecca ignored him. She focused on the captain. Sir, regulations say we can investigate suspicious circumstances. I'm just being thorough. Marcus's hands clenched into fists. Suspicious circumstances. There it was. The word that made everything clear. What was suspicious? His skin color? His casual clothes? His youth? He was 42, but people often thought he looked younger. Was that suspicious too? Captain Morrison, Marcus said, keeping his voice level. I've been patient. Very patient. But this has gone on for 25 minutes now. I have shown valid identification. My ticket has been verified by your computer system. Your flight attendant has let multiple passengers board without questioning them. She only stopped me. I think we both know why. The captain's face reddened. Sir, I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding. No, Marcus said firmly. It's not a misunderstanding. It's profiling. And it's illegal, Rebecca gasped. How dare you accuse me of that? I treat all passengers equally. Then why didn't you ask to see anyone else's boarding pass? Marcus asked. That gentleman in seat 2B walked right past you. That woman in seat 4C did too. You didn't question them. You didn't ask about their luggage or their clothes. Only me. Silence fell over the cabin again. The other passengers looked even more uncomfortable now. Some stared at their phones. Others pretended to read magazines. But everyone was listening. Everyone knew Marcus was right. The elderly woman with pearls spoke up again. Well, you do have to admit it's unusual. First-class tickets are very expensive. You can't blame her for being surprised. Marcus turned to look at her. Surprised by what? Surprised that someone who looks like me can afford an expensive ticket? Surprised that a black man in a hoodie might actually have money? The woman's mouth fell open. I never said anything about race. You didn't have to, Marcus said. His voice was quiet but strong. It's in every word. Every assumption. Every doubt. A younger woman in seat 6A spoke up. She had been recording the whole interaction on her phone. He's right. This is clearly discrimination. I've been filming everything. Rebecca whirled around. You can't film on an airplane. Actually, I can, the woman said. There's no law against filming in public spaces. And this is definitely something people need to see. The captain held up his hands. Everyone, please calm down. Sir, he turned to Marcus, I apologize for the delay. Your ticket is valid. Please take your seat, Marcus shook his head. I want her apology too. He pointed at Rebecca. She accused me of sneaking onto this plane. She questioned my ticket repeatedly. She treated me like a criminal. I want an apology. Rebecca's face turned bright red. I was just doing my job. Your job is to welcome passengers and ensure their safety, Marcus said. Not to profile them based on how they look. The captain looked torn. He clearly wanted this situation to end. He needed to get the plane in the air. They were already behind schedule. Rebecca apologized to the passenger. Rebecca's jaw clenched. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, through tight lips, she said, I apologize if you felt uncomfortable. That's not an apology, Marcus said. That's a non-apology. You're sorry I felt uncomfortable? How about being sorry for your actions? For treating me differently than every other passenger? The captain sighed. Rebecca, apologize properly or I'll have to write this up in my report. Rebecca's eyes flashed with anger. But she knew she was cornered. Fine. I apologize for questioning your ticket. May I show you to your seat now? It was still not a real apology. But Marcus was exhausted. He had made his point. Yes, he said simply. Rebecca walked stiffly ahead of him to row 3. She didn't offer to help with his backpack. She didn't make small talk. She pointed at seat 3A and walked away without another word. Marcus sat down. The leather seat was comfortable. It reclined far back. There was plenty of legroom, but he didn't feel relaxed. His heart was still pounding. His hands were shaking slightly from the adrenaline. The Asian man from seat 5C leaned forward. That was brave, he said quietly. I'm James Park. Marcus turned. Marcus Chen. James nodded. I saw everything. She was completely out of line. I've had similar experiences. Not quite this bad, but I know what it's like. It's exhausting, Marcus said. It is. James agreed. But you stood up for yourself. A lot of people would have just gone to economy to avoid the confrontation. They would have let her win. Marcus shook his head. I couldn't do that. Not anymore. I spent too many years making myself smaller, trying not to make waves, trying to fit in. I'm done with that, James smiled. Good for you. If you need a witness for any complaint, I'll back you up. I recorded part of it too. Thank you, Marcus said. He was grateful for the support. It felt lonely standing up there in the aisle being questioned and doubted. The plane finally started moving. The captain's voice came over the intercom, apologizing for the delay and blaming it on a ticketing issue that has been resolved. Marcus almost laughed. A ticketing issue. That was one way to describe racism. As the plane taxied toward the runway, Marcus noticed Rebecca talking to another flight attendant near the galley. They kept glancing his way. He couldn't hear what they were saying, but he could guess. Rebecca was probably complaining about him, probably playing the victim, probably saying he was difficult or aggressive. Marcus pulled out his laptop. He opened a new document and started typing. He wrote down everything that happened. Every detail. Every word. The time he boarded. The time Rebecca stopped him. How long he waited. How many other passengers walked past without being questioned. The captain's arrival. Rebecca's accusations. The non-apology. He wrote for 30 minutes. By the time he finished, they were at cruising altitude. The document was 3 pages long, detailed, clear, factual. A different flight attendant came by. A young black woman with a kind face. "Can I get you something to drink, sir?" she asked warmly. "Water, please," Marcus said. She brought him a bottle of water with a glass of ice. "I heard what happened at boarding," she said quietly. "I'm sorry you went through that. It shouldn't have happened." Marcus looked at her name tag. "Thank you, Lisa, I appreciate that." Lisa hesitated. "Between you and me, this isn't the first time Rebecca has had issues with passengers of color. There have been complaints before, but somehow nothing ever happens." Marcus felt his anger rise again. "Nothing ever happens? Why not?" Lisa glanced around nervously. "I shouldn't be saying this, but she's been here a long time. She knows people in management. Complaints just disappear." "Well," Marcus said slowly, "this complaint won't disappear. I promise you that." Lisa gave him a small smile and moved on to the next passenger. Marcus watched Rebecca work the cabin. She was all smiles with the white passengers, chatty and helpful. When she passed Marcus's seat, her face went blank. She didn't make eye contact. She didn't offer him anything. During the meal service, the difference became even more obvious. Rebecca took everyone else's orders personally. She laughed at their jokes. She recommended the salmon over the chicken. But when she got to Marcus, she just pointed at a card. "Menu's on the seat pocket," she said coldly. James Park leaned forward again. "She's still being rude to you? After everything?" "That's unbelievable," Marcus nodded. He wasn't surprised. People like Rebecca never really changed. They just became more careful about hiding their prejudices. Or in this case, she wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. He pulled out his phone. He opened the Notes app and added more details. The contrast in service. Rebecca's continued cold treatment. Lisa's comment about previous complaints. Everything was documented. 3 hours into the flight, Marcus gave up trying to sleep. His mind wouldn't stop replaying the scene at boarding. The questions, the doubts, the assumptions. He had experienced racism before, of course. Growing up, he faced it in school. Teachers who assumed he was bad at math even though he was the best in his class. Coaches who were surprised when he excelled at chess. Store clerks who followed him around assuming he would steal something, but he thought things were different now. He thought his success would protect him somehow. He had built a billion-dollar company. He had been featured in business magazines. He had given speeches at major conferences. He thought all of that meant something. But sitting in this airplane, he realized it meant nothing to people like Rebecca. All she saw was his skin color, his hoodie, his backpack. That was enough for her to decide he didn't belong. Marcus stood up to use the bathroom. As he walked down the aisle, he passed the galley. Rebecca was there with Daniel and another flight attendant. They didn't see him approach. He heard Rebecca's voice, sharp and angry. "I'm telling you, something's not right about him," she said. "People like that don't just buy first-class tickets. He probably used a stolen credit card or something." Marcus stopped walking. His blood ran cold. Stolen credit card? She was still accusing him of crimes? Daniel sounded uncomfortable. "Rebecca, his ticket was verified. Maybe you should just let it go." "I have instincts," Rebecca insisted. 15 years in this job and my instincts are never wrong. There's something off about him. Did you see how aggressive he got? How he played the race card? The third flight attendant, a middle-aged white man, laughed. "They always do that nowadays. You can't question anything without someone crying racism. Marcus felt sick. He stepped forward, making his presence known. All 3 flight attendants jumped. Rebecca's face went pale. "Don't stop on my account," Marcus said coldly. "Please continue talking about me. I'm fascinated to hear what other crimes you think I've committed." "Sir, Rebecca started. "Stolen credit card," Marcus interrupted. "That's what you think? You think I committed fraud to sit in your precious first-class cabin?" Daniel looked mortified. "Mr. Chen, she didn't mean—" "Yes, she did," Marcus said. "She meant exactly what she said. Just like she meant to stop only me at boarding. Just like she meant to question only my ticket. There's a pattern here, a very clear pattern." The 3rd flight attendant tried to defend Rebecca. "Look, we have to be careful. Credit card fraud is a real problem in the airline industry." "Then why didn't you check everyone's credit card?" Marcus asked. "Why only mine? What made me specifically look like a criminal to you?" No one answered. Because they all knew the answer. They just couldn't say it out loud. Marcus continued to the bathroom. His hands were shaking with anger. When he returned to his seat, James Park caught his eye and gestured for him to lean closer. "I heard that too," James whispered. "I was coming back from the bathroom. That flight attendant is digging herself into a deeper hole." "I can't believe this," Marcus said quietly. "Even after everything, she's still making accusations." "Some people never learn," James said. "But you have witnesses now." "Multiple witnesses. And recordings. She can't deny any of this." Marcus nodded slowly. An idea was forming in his mind. He wasn't going to let this go. He couldn't. Not just for himself, but for everyone else who had been treated this way. Everyone who had been questioned and doubted. Everyone who had been made to feel less than. He opened his laptop again. He went to his social media account. Marcus didn't post often. His account was mostly for business updates. He had about 50,000 followers, mostly people in the tech industry. But he knew his posts got attention. People respected his voice. Marcus started writing. He told the whole story from the beginning. Boarding the plane, being stopped, being questioned repeatedly, the assumptions about his clothes and luggage, the non-apology, the continued poor service, and finally the conversation he overheard about stolen credit cards. He wrote for an hour. The post was long, but every word mattered. He wanted people to understand exactly what happened. Not a summary, not a quick complaint, the full, detailed truth. Before posting, Marcus hesitated. Once he sent this into the world, there was no taking it back. It would spread. It would get attention. His company's investors might worry. His board of directors might object. Some people would say he was playing the victim. Others would say he should have handled it privately. But Marcus thought about all the people who didn't have his platform. All the people who experienced discrimination and had no voice. No one listened to them. No one believed them. They were told they were too sensitive. Told they misunderstood. Told to stop making everything about race. Marcus hit post. He closed his laptop and tried to rest, but his phone started buzzing within minutes. Comments were coming in. People were sharing his post. It was spreading faster than he expected. By the time the plane landed 7 hours later, his post had been shared 10,000 times. Marcus walked off the plane without looking at Rebecca. He didn't want to see her face. He didn't want to hear any more excuses. He just wanted to get to his hotel and sleep. But at the gate, James Park caught up with him. "Marcus, wait," James said. "I wanted to give you my contact information. If you file a complaint, I'll provide a statement." "I saw everything." "Thank you," Marcus said sincerely. "That means a lot." James handed him a business card. "I run an import-export company. I've flown millions of miles in my career. I've experienced my share of discrimination too. But what happened to you today was extreme. That flight attendant needs to face consequences." They shook hands and parted ways. Marcus caught a taxi to his hotel. The London streets were gray and rainy. Perfect weather to match his mood. When he finally got to his room, he collapsed on the bed, exhausted, drained, angry. His phone kept buzzing. He looked at the screen. His post had 50,000 shares now. News outlets were reaching out. Friends were texting. His assistant had sent 6 messages asking if he was okay and if this really happened. Marcus turned off his phone and closed his eyes. He woke up 6 hours later. It was evening in London. His meetings were tomorrow morning. He needed to prepare. But first, he checked his phone. His post now had 200,000 shares. It had been picked up by major news websites. Headlines everywhere. Tech billionaire faces discrimination on flight. Black entrepreneur refused first-class seat. Airline under fire for racial profiling. There were thousands of comments. Most were supportive. People sharing their own stories of discrimination while traveling. Black passengers who had been questioned about their tickets. Hispanic passengers who had been assumed to be flying on someone else's miles. Asian passengers who had been told they were in the wrong section. But some comments were hostile. People saying Marcus was too sensitive, saying the flight attendant was just doing her job, saying he was rich and should stop complaining, saying he only posted about it for attention. These comments stung, but Marcus expected them. There were always people who refused to see the truth. The airline had posted a response. A short generic statement. We are aware of an incident involving one of our passengers. We take all complaints seriously and are investigating. We apologize for any misunderstanding. Any misunderstanding. Marcus laughed bitterly. They were already minimizing what happened, already trying to make it seem like a simple mistake rather than blatant discrimination. He scrolled through more news articles. Some had found Rebecca's name. Some had interviewed other passengers on the flight. The woman who recorded the interaction had posted her video. It showed everything. Marcus being stopped. Rebecca's accusations. The captain's arrival. All of it caught on camera. The video went viral. 5 million views in one day. People were outraged. They flooded the airline's social media pages with complaints. They demanded Rebecca be fired. They called for boycotts. The airline's carefully worded statement wasn't enough anymore. Marcus received a call from his company's lawyer. Marcus, I saw your post. I think we should discuss legal options. I'm not sure I want to sue, Marcus said. I just want things to change. Sometimes legal action is the only way to force change, the lawyer said. Think about it. We can talk more when you're back in New York. After the call, Marcus sat on his hotel bed and thought, what did he really want from this? Money, he had plenty of money. An apology? He doubted any apology would be sincere. Rebecca fired? Maybe. But that would just solve one problem. There were probably hundreds of other flight attendants like her. Thousands of situations like this happening every day. What Marcus really wanted was systemic change. He wanted airlines to take discrimination seriously. He wanted proper training. He wanted accountability. He wanted passengers of color to board planes without fear of being questioned or humiliated. Another news alert came through. The airline's stock had dropped 2%. Investors were worried about the bad publicity. Good, Marcus thought. Maybe financial pressure would force them to take real action. His phone rang again. This time it was a number he didn't recognize. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Is this Marcus Chen? A woman's voice asked. Yes, Marcus said cautiously. Mr. Chen, this is Patricia Morrison. I was on your flight, seat 4D. Marcus tried to remember. Seat 4D. That was near the front. Okay, he said slowly. I saw what happened at boarding, Patricia said. Her voice sounded strained. I didn't say anything then. I should have. I wanted to call and apologize. Marcus was surprised. You're apologizing? Yes, Patricia said. I sat there and watched you be humiliated. I knew it was wrong, but I didn't speak up. I'm ashamed of myself. And I wanted you to know that I support you. What happened to you was disgraceful. Marcus woke up the next morning to chaos. His phone had hundreds of notifications, text messages, emails, social media mentions, missed calls. His post about the flight had exploded overnight. It now had over 1 million shares. The video from the passenger had 10 million views. His story was everywhere. Major news networks wanted interviews. Talk shows wanted him as a guest. Civil rights organizations wanted to meet with him. And, buried among all those messages was one from the airline's CEO. Mr. Chen, this is Richard Hartley, CEO of Skyward Airlines. I would like to speak with you personally about the incident on Flight 237. Please call me at your earliest convenience. Marcus stared at the message. The CEO himself. That was fast. Usually companies tried to handle complaints at lower levels. The fact that the CEO was reaching out meant they were scared. Really scared. He had meetings all morning with potential investors, important meetings for his company's European expansion. He couldn't cancel them, so he put his phone on silent and focused on work. The meetings went well. The investors loved his vision for bringing artificial intelligence to European healthcare systems. By lunchtime, Marcus had secured $15 million in new funding. But even in the meetings, people mentioned the flight incident. "We saw what happened to you," one investor said. "Terrible. Just terrible. But you handled it with grace." Marcus thanked them, but inside he felt tired. He didn't want to be known for this. He wanted to be known for his work, his innovations, his company, not for being the black man who was discriminated against on a plane. After his last meeting, Marcus called the airline CEO. Richard Hartley answered immediately. "Mr. Chen, thank you for calling," Hartley said. His voice was smooth, professional. "I want to personally apologize for what happened on your flight. The treatment you received was completely unacceptable." "I appreciate the apology," Marcus said carefully. "But I've heard a lot of apologies in the past 24 hours. What I want is action." "Of course," Hartley said quickly. "We've launched a full investigation. The flight attendant in question has been placed on leave pending the results." "Just leave?" Marcus asked. "Not termination?" Hartley hesitated. "We have to follow proper procedures. Union rules, due process, but I assure you we take this very seriously." Marcus had heard this kind of talk before. It was corporate speak for, "We'll wait until this blows over, and then quietly bring her back." He decided to push harder. "Mr. Hartley, this wasn't just about one flight attendant. This is about a systemic problem. How many complaints has Rebecca Walsh had before? How many other passengers has she discriminated against?" Silence on the other end. Then Hartley spoke slowly. "I can't discuss personnel matters. That's not good enough," Marcus interrupted. "Your airline has a pattern of discrimination. I've received hundreds of messages in the past day from other passengers, black passengers, Hispanic passengers, Asian passengers, all telling similar stories. Your company has a serious problem and one investigation won't fix it." "What would you like us to do?" Hartley asked. He sounded defensive now. "I want real change," Marcus said. "Mandatory training for all employees. Not just a 1-hour video they can ignore. Real comprehensive training on bias and discrimination. I want an independent audit of your complaint system. I want to know why previous complaints against Rebecca Walsh were ignored. I want transparency." Hartley was quiet for a moment. "Those are significant requests." "Yes, they are," Marcus agreed. "But they're necessary. Your company's stock has dropped 3%. You're losing customers. People are calling for boycotts. This is only going to get worse unless you take real action." "Let me be frank with you, Mr. Chen," Hartley said. His voice changed, became harder. "You've caused a lot of damage to our company. Your social media post has been very harmful. We're considering whether your actions constitute defamation." Marcus almost laughed. They were threatening him? Defamation? Everything I posted was true. I have witnesses. I have video evidence. If you want to sue me for telling the truth, go ahead. I have very good lawyers. I'm not threatening you. Hartley backtracked quickly. I'm just saying that perhaps we could resolve this more quietly, privately, without all the media attention. You mean you want me to delete my post and stay quiet while you sweep this under the rug? Marcus said. That's not going to happen. We're prepared to offer compensation, Hartley said. A full refund of your ticket, plus additional compensation for your distress, and lifetime first-class status. Marcus shook his head, even though Hartley couldn't see him. I don't want your money or your status. I want change, real change. Mr. Chen, be reasonable. I am being reasonable, Marcus said. Your company discriminated against me. It happens to be caught on video. Now you have to face the consequences. You can either work with me to make real changes or you can fight me. But I promise you, fighting me will be much worse for your company. The call ended badly. Hartley said he would discuss Marcus's demands with his board and get back to him. Marcus knew that was code for, we'll stall until this story dies down. but Marcus wasn't going to let it die down. That evening, Marcus did his first interview. A major news network wanted to talk to him. He agreed. The interview was watched by 2 million people. Marcus told his story calmly and clearly. He showed the receipts, the ticket, the timeline, the witnesses. He explained how Rebecca had questioned only him, how she accused him of using a stolen credit card, how the airline's response had been inadequate. The interviewer asked, "Some people say you're overreacting, that the flight attendant was just being cautious. What do you say to them?" Marcus looked directly into the camera. "I say they've never experienced what it's like to be constantly questioned, constantly doubted, constantly assumed to be less than. I have a billion-dollar company. I've created thousands of jobs. I've given millions to charity. But none of that mattered on that plane. All that mattered was my skin color. And that's not acceptable. Not in 2025. Not ever." The interview went viral. Clips of it spread across every social media platform. Celebrities started weighing in. Civil rights leaders called for action. Politicians issued statements. The pressure on Skyward Airlines became enormous. Within 2 days, the airline's stock had dropped 7%. Major companies threatened to pull their corporate travel contracts. Flight attendants' unions issued statements condemning discrimination. Other airlines issued statements about their own anti-discrimination policies, trying to distance themselves from Skyward. Marcus received another call from CEO Hartley. This time his tone was completely different. "Mr. Chen, I've spoken with our board. We would like to meet with you to discuss your proposals for change." "I'm listening," Marcus said. "We're willing to implement comprehensive anti-bias training for all 25,000 of our employees. We're willing to hire an independent firm to audit our complaint system. And we're willing to establish a passenger advocacy board to review discrimination complaints." It was more than Marcus expected, but he wanted to make sure they were serious. "Who will be on this advocacy board?" "We'd like you to help select the members," Hartley said. "We want community leaders, civil rights experts, people who will hold us accountable." "And Rebecca Walsh?" Marcus asked. Hartley sighed. "Our investigation found multiple prior complaints against her. Complaints that were not properly addressed. She's been terminated." Marcus felt a mix of emotions. Relief that she wouldn't harass any more passengers, but also concern about whether she would just get hired somewhere else and do the same thing. "What about the managers who ignored those complaints?" Marcus asked. "2 supervisors have been placed on leave pending further investigation," Hartley said. "Mr. Chen, I want you to know that I personally failed here. I should have known about the pattern of complaints. I should have ensured our systems were working properly. I take responsibility for that." Marcus appreciated that Hartley was finally being genuine. "Okay," he said. "I'm willing to work with you. But I have conditions." "Name them," Hartley said. "First, all of these changes need to be public, not internal policies that nobody sees. Public commitments that can be tracked and measured. Second, I want quarterly reports on complaint numbers and resolutions. Complete transparency. Third, I want to fund the training myself through my foundation. That way I can ensure it's done right." "You want to fund it yourself?" Hartley sounded surprised. "Yes," Marcus said. "This isn't about punishing your company. It's about making real change. I have resources. I have expertise in implementing training programs, and I want to make sure this is done properly." "That's very generous," Hartley said. "We accept your conditions." They talked for another hour about details. Marcus would work with experts to develop the training curriculum. The airline would bring in an outside firm to audit every discrimination complaint from the past 5 years. They would create a public dashboard showing complaint trends and resolution rates. It was ambitious, maybe too ambitious, but Marcus believed it could work. When he hung up, Marcus felt exhausted but satisfied. This was progress. Real progress. Not just empty apologies and vague promises. Actual measurable change. His phone rang again. This time it was James Park, the passenger who witnessed everything. "Marcus, I saw your interview," James said. "You were brilliant, and I heard the airline is making changes. That's because of you." "It's because of all of us," Marcus said. "You spoke up. Other passengers spoke up. The person who recorded the video, We all made this happen. True, James agreed. But you had the courage to go public. Most people would have taken a settlement and stayed quiet. Marcus thought about that. It would have been easier to stay quiet. To take the money and move on. But easier wasn't always right. I kept thinking about all the people who don't have a platform, Marcus said. The people who experience discrimination and nobody listens. If I stayed quiet, I'd be letting them down. Well, you didn't let anyone down, James said warmly. 2 weeks after the incident, Marcus sat in a conference room at Skyward Airlines headquarters in Chicago. Around the table were 15 people, the CEO, Richard Hartley, several board members, HR executives, legal counsel, and 3 experts Marcus had brought in. Dr. Sarah Kim, a professor who specialized in unconscious bias training, Michael Torres, a former airline executive who now worked in diversity consulting, and Jennifer Williams, a civil rights attorney. Thank you all for coming, Hartley began. We're here to develop a comprehensive program to address discrimination in our company. Mr. Chen, would you like to start? Marcus nodded. He had prepared extensively for this meeting. Before we talk about solutions, we need to understand the scope of the problem. I've asked your team to pull every discrimination complaint from the past 5 years. What did you find? A woman named Patricia Green, the head of HR, cleared her throat nervously. We found 347 complaints related to potential discrimination. Based on race, nationality, religion, or appearance, the room fell silent. 347. That was far more than Marcus expected. How many of those complaints resulted in disciplinary action? Marcus asked. Patricia looked down at her papers. 12. Marcus felt anger rise in his chest. 12? Out of 347 complaints, only 12 led to any consequences. Many of the complaints were deemed unsubstantiated, Patricia said defensively. It's often one person's word against another. Dr. Kim spoke up. That's exactly the problem. When you have a pattern of complaints against specific employees and you do nothing, you're essentially telling those employees their behavior is acceptable. You're also telling passengers that complaining is useless. Michael Torres added, In my 20 years in the airline industry, I've seen this pattern repeatedly. Companies collect complaints but don't act on them. They're afraid of union pushback, afraid of legal liability, so complaints get filed away and forgotten. Not anymore, Hartley said firmly. That stops today. What do we need to do? Over the next 4 hours, they developed a comprehensive plan. First, every one of those 347 complaints would be reviewed by an independent team. Patterns would be identified. Employees with multiple complaints would face consequences, including retraining or termination. Second, the complaint system itself would be redesigned. Currently, passengers had to fill out forms and mail them in. The process was slow and discouraging. The new system would include an app where passengers could report incidents immediately, with photos or videos as evidence. Reports would go directly to an independent review board, not to internal HR third and, most importantly, the training program. Dr. Kim outlined her vision. Unconscious bias training doesn't work if it's just a video employees watch once and forget. It needs to be immersive, interactive, and ongoing. What does that look like practically? A board member asked. Every employee goes through an 8-hour initial training, Dr. Kim explained. Not a video. An actual classroom session with role-playing scenarios. We'll use real cases, including Mr. Chen's experience. Employees will practice recognizing bias in real time. Then every 6 months, there's a 2-hour refresher session, and we measure results. We track complaint numbers. We do anonymous surveys with passengers of color. We hold the company accountable. One of the board members frowned. That's expensive. We're talking about training 25,000 employees. 8 hours each. That's 200,000 hours of labor costs. Marcus spoke up, which is why my foundation is funding it. I'm committing $10 million over 5 years. That should cover the training costs, the independent review board, and the technology for the new complaint system. The board member's mouth fell open. $10 million? Why would you do that? Because this isn't just about your airline, Marcus said. This is about changing an industry. If we can show that comprehensive anti-bias training works, other airlines will adopt it. Other industries will adopt it. This is bigger than one flight. Bigger than one company. Hartley looked genuinely moved. Mr. Chen, that's incredibly generous. But we can't accept that much money from you. It wouldn't be appropriate. Then match it, Marcus said. Put in 10 million of your own funds. Make this a partnership. Show your employees and your customers that you're serious about change. Hartley looked at his board members. They had a quick whispered conversation. Then Hartley nodded. Okay, we'll match your investment. 20 million total. This will be the most comprehensive anti-discrimination program in the airline industry. They shook hands. The meeting continued for another 2 hours, hammering out details. Who would develop the training materials? How the review board would be structured? What metrics they would track? It was exhausting but exhilarating. Marcus was watching real change happen. When the meeting finally ended, Marcus walked out with Dr. Kim, Michael, and Jennifer. They went to a nearby coffee shop to debrief. That went better than I expected, Jennifer said. Usually companies fight every suggestion, but Hartley seemed genuinely committed. He's scared, Michael said bluntly. The company's stock is still down. They've lost major contracts. He knows this is necessary for business survival. I don't care why he's doing it, Marcus said, as long as it gets done. As long as things actually change. Dr. Kim smiled. You know, Marcus, what you're doing is remarkable. Most people who experience discrimination just want to move on. Forget about it. You're using your experience to help thousands of people you'll never meet. Marcus sipped his coffee. My grandmother used to say that privilege without purpose is just selfishness. I have privilege, money, platform, influence. If I don't use those things to make the world better, what's the point? Over the next month, Marcus threw himself into the project. He worked with Dr. Kim to develop training scenarios. They interviewed passengers who had experienced discrimination. They studied research on effective bias reduction. They consulted with other industries that had implemented similar programs. The training scenarios they created were powerful. One showed a flight attendant questioning a Hispanic passenger about her ticket, even though the passenger had a valid boarding pass. Another showed an Asian passenger being asked repeatedly if he spoke English, even though he was born in the United States. Another showed a Muslim woman being subjected to extra security screening for no apparent reason. Each scenario forced employees to examine their own assumptions, to recognize how small actions could make passengers feel unwelcome or unsafe, to understand that intentions didn't matter if the impact was harmful. Marcus also worked on the app for reporting discrimination. It was simple and user-friendly. Passengers could submit a report in less than 2 minutes. They could upload photos or videos. They could do it anonymously if they preferred. Reports went directly to the independent review board, which included civil rights experts, former passengers who had experienced discrimination, and airline industry professionals. The app launched 3 months after the incident. Within the first week, 75 reports came in. Some were clear cases of discrimination. Others were misunderstandings or simple rudeness not based on race. But every report was reviewed carefully. Employees were interviewed. Witnesses were contacted. Consequences were real. 5 flight attendants were fired in the first month, not just for individual incidents, but because the review board found patterns of discriminatory behavior. 12 others received mandatory retraining. 6 supervisors who had ignored complaints were demoted. The numbers were shocking to some, but Marcus saw them as necessary. You can't change a culture without consequences, he told a reporter who questioned whether the company was being too harsh. For decades, employees knew they could discriminate without punishment. That message is changing. The new message is clear: discrimination will not be tolerated. Not everyone was happy about the changes. Marcus received angry messages from people who said he was being too sensitive, from people who said he was trying to get flight attendants fired, from people who accused him of playing the victim. But he also received thousands of supportive messages. From passengers who had experienced discrimination and felt validated. From airline employees who wanted to work for a more inclusive company. From parents who wanted their children to travel without fear of being treated poorly. One message particularly touched Marcus. It was from a young black woman named Keisha Johnson. She wrote, "Mr. Chen, I'm 18 years old and I just took my first flight ever. I was so nervous about being questioned or treated badly because I've heard so many stories. But the flight attendant was kind to me. She welcomed me warmly. She made sure I was comfortable. I cried after I sat down because I realized this is how everyone should be treated. Thank you for making that possible." Marcus read the message 3 times. This was why the work mattered. Not for him. Not for his ego or his reputation. But for young people like Keisha who just wanted to travel without fear. For families who wanted to visit relatives without being humiliated. For business travelers who wanted to focus on their work instead of constantly defending their right to be there. 4 months after the incident, Marcus received a call from Hartley. "I wanted to update you on our progress," the CEO said. "Discrimination complaints are down 68% compared to this time last year." "That's significant," Marcus said. "But we need to make sure people are still reporting. Sometimes numbers drop because people stop complaining, not because discrimination stops." "We thought of that," Hartley said. "We're conducting anonymous surveys with passengers of color, asking about their experiences. The results are encouraging. 82% say they feel more welcome on our flights than they did a year ago." Marcus smiled. "Real progress. Measurable progress." "There's something else," Hartley continued. 3 other major airlines have contacted us. They want to know about our program. They want to implement similar changes." This was what Marcus had hoped for, change spreading beyond one company. "What did you tell them?" "We told them everything," Hartley said. "We shared our training materials, our complaint system, our results. We're not keeping this proprietary. The more airlines that implement these changes, the better it is for everyone." Marcus felt a wave of satisfaction. This was bigger than he imagined. His terrible experience on that flight was leading to industry-wide change. Millions of passengers would benefit. "Marcus," Hartley said quietly, "I want to thank you again. You could have just sued us, taken a settlement, moved on with your life. Instead, you chose to work with us, to push us to be better. That took courage and grace. It took both of us," Marcus said. "You could have fought me, denied everything, protected your reputation at all costs. Instead, you admitted the problems and committed to fixing them. That also took courage." They talked for a few more minutes, then hung up. Marcus sat in his office, looking out the window at New York City below. 6 months ago, he was just trying to take a flight to London. Now, he was helping transform an entire industry. 6 months after the incident, Marcus stood at a podium in front of 200 airline employees. This was the first graduation ceremony for the anti-bias training program. 200 flight attendants had completed the intensive 8-hour course. They had passed the assessments. They had shown genuine understanding of how bias works and how to combat it. Marcus looked out at the diverse faces in the crowd, young and old, different races and backgrounds, all of them committed to making travel better for everyone. 6 months ago, I had a terrible experience on a flight, Marcus began. I was questioned. I was doubted. I was accused of crimes I didn't commit, all because a flight attendant made assumptions based on how I looked. The room was completely silent. Everyone knew the story. It had been used as a case study in their training. That experience was painful, Marcus continued, humiliating, infuriating. But I had a choice in how to respond. I could have stayed angry. I could have just sued and moved on. Or I could try to create something positive from something negative. He paused and looked around the room. All of you made a choice too. You could have resented this training, seen it as punishment or a waste of time. But you didn't. You engaged with it. You examined your own biases honestly. You committed to doing better. And that matters more than you know. Marcus shared some statistics. Since the training program began, discrimination complaints on trained employees were down 78%. Passenger satisfaction scores from travelers of color were up 43%. The airline had received hundreds of compliments about improved service. These numbers represent real people, Marcus said. Real families who can travel without fear. Real business travelers who can focus on their work. Real young people taking their first flights and feeling welcomed. That's what you've accomplished. After his speech, several flight attendants came up to talk to him. A black woman named Angela hugged him. Thank you for not giving up, she said. I've worked for this airline for 12 years. I've seen so much discrimination. Against passengers and against employees. I almost quit last year because I was so tired of it. But now things are changing. Really changing. A white man in his 50s approached nervously. Mr. Chen, I need to tell you something. I was at your gate that day. I saw what happened with Rebecca. I didn't say anything. I just walked past you and went to my seat. I've regretted that every day since. Marcus put a hand on the man's shoulder. What's important is what you do now. Did you complete the training? I did, the man said. And it opened my eyes. I realized how many times I've stayed silent when I should have spoken up. How many times I've benefited from a system that treats people like me better. That's over now. If I see discrimination, I'm going to say something. That's all any of us can do, Marcus said. Recognize our biases. Challenge them. Speak up when we see injustice. Marcus left the ceremony feeling hopeful. Real change was happening. But he knew the work wasn't done. There would be setbacks. There would be employees who resisted. There would be incidents that tested the new systems. This was a marathon, not a sprint. The next day, Marcus flew to Los Angeles for a business meeting. He deliberately chose Skyward Airlines. He wanted to see the changes firsthand. At the gate, a young Hispanic flight attendant greeted him warmly. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Chen," she said. "We're honored to have you flying with us," Marcus smiled. "Thank you, but please just treat me like any other passenger." "That's all I want," the woman nodded. "Of course. Let me show you to your seat." The flight was uneventful, exactly how it should be. Marcus worked on his laptop, ate his meal, slept for a few hours. When he woke up, a different flight attendant, an older white man, was passing by. "Excuse me," the man said. "Are you Marcus Chen, the tech entrepreneur?" Marcus nodded cautiously. He never knew how people would react to recognizing him. "I just wanted to thank you," the man said. "I've been flying for 30 years. I've seen a lot of things I'm not proud of. Things I should have stopped but didn't. Your courage in speaking up changed this company. It changed me. So thank you." Marcus was touched. "What's your name?" "Robert," the man said. "Robert, the real heroes are people like you," Marcus said. "People who are willing to examine their own behavior and change. That's not easy, but it's necessary." They talked for a few minutes. Robert shared that he had been friends with Rebecca Walsh, the flight attendant who was fired. "I was angry at first," Robert admitted. "I thought the company overreacted. But then I went through the training. I learned about all the complaints against her, all the passengers she had hurt. And I realized I had been part of the problem by defending her, by making excuses for her behavior." "It takes courage to admit that," Marcus said. "Well, it took your courage first," Robert replied. "If you had stayed silent, nothing would have changed. Rebecca would still be harassing passengers. The company would still be ignoring complaints. So thank you for not staying silent." After Robert walked away, Marcus thought about how far things had come. 6 months ago, he was being questioned and accused. Now flight attendants were thanking him. The transformation was remarkable. But Marcus also knew that his experience was unique. He had money, platform, influence. Most people who experienced discrimination didn't have those advantages. They couldn't go viral on social media. They couldn't fund $10 million training programs. They couldn't demand meetings with CEOs. That's why Marcus had created the Travelers' Rights Legal Fund, $10 million set aside to help people who experienced discrimination while traveling. If someone was wrongly removed from a flight, the fund would pay for lawyers. If someone was discriminated against and couldn't afford to fight back, the fund would help them. Marcus wanted to use his privilege to lift up people who didn't have the same resources. The fund had already helped 32 people in 6 months. A Muslim woman who was removed from a flight for speaking Arabic on her phone. A black family who was accused of being too loud. A transgender man who was harassed about his identification. Each case was different, but the pattern was the same. People being treated poorly because of who they were. Marcus's company had also created the Travel Safety app. It was free for everyone. Passengers could report discrimination in real time. They could see patterns at different airlines and airports. They could read tips on what to do if they were discriminated against. The app had been downloaded 2 million times. But perhaps the most significant change was happening in the industry itself. 4 major airlines had now implemented programs similar to Skyward's. 2 airport authorities had adopted anti-bias training for security staff. The Department of Transportation had proposed new regulations requiring airlines to track and report discrimination complaints. Marcus had been invited to testify before Congress about discrimination in travel. He told his story to a room full of lawmakers. He presented data showing the scope of the problem. He offered solutions. Some representatives listened carefully. Others dismissed his concerns. But seeds were planted. Conversations were happening. Change was slow, but it was happening. 1 year after the incident, Marcus received a letter. It was from Patricia Morrison, the elderly woman with pearls who had complained about him at boarding. the woman who suggested he was trying to sneak into first class. "Dear Mr. Chen," the letter began, "I owe you an apology. A real apology, not like the empty words I might have offered at the time. I was on your flight that day. I watched you be humiliated, and I said things that added to that humiliation. I am deeply ashamed." The letter continued for 2 pages. Patricia explained that she had been raised in a different time with different values. She had never examined her own prejudices, but watching the aftermath of the incident, seeing the pain it caused, had forced her to confront her beliefs. "I have spent this year trying to educate myself," she wrote, "reading books about racism, attending workshops, listening to voices I had previously ignored. I will never fully understand what it's like to be you, but I am trying to be better, and I wanted you to know that your courage changed at least one person. Thank you for not staying silent." Marcus read the letter 3 times. He was moved by Patricia's honesty and growth. He wrote back to her, thanking her for the apology and encouraging her continued learning. Not everyone would change like Patricia did, but the fact that anyone could change gave Marcus hope. Marcus also heard from James Park, the businessman who had witnessed everything and offered support. James and Marcus had become friends. They met for coffee every few months. "You've inspired me," James told Marcus over lunch one day. "I've started a similar program in my industry, anti-bias training for international business negotiations, teaching people to recognize when cultural assumptions are interfering with good business." This was the ripple effect Marcus had hoped for. One person taking action, inspiring others to take action. Those people inspiring others, change spreading outward like waves on water. 2 years after the incident, Marcus boarded another flight on Skyward Airlines. As he walked onto the plane, he noticed something. The first-class cabin was more diverse than he had ever seen it. Black passengers, Asian passengers, Hispanic passengers, people in suits and people in casual clothes. Everyone welcomed the same way. A flight attendant greeted him, a young black woman wearing her natural hair. "Good evening, Mr. Chen. Welcome aboard. Can I help you with your bag?" "No, thank you," Marcus said. "I've got it." As he settled into his seat, Marcus reflected on the journey. It had started with anger and frustration, with being questioned and doubted, with feeling less than, but it had led to something bigger, something meaningful, real, measurable change that helped thousands of people. His phone buzzed. Another message from someone sharing their positive flight experience. A young Muslim woman who flew without being profiled. An elderly black couple who were treated with respect and dignity. A teenager taking his first solo flight and feeling safe. Marcus smiled. This was why the work mattered. This was why he couldn't stay silent. Every person who traveled without fear, without doubt, without humiliation, made everything worthwhile. The plane took off. As it climbed into the sky, Marcus looked out the window at the clouds below. He thought about Rebecca Walsh, wherever she was now. He hoped she had learned something. He hoped she had grown. But even if she hadn't, the systems had changed around her. The culture had changed. Other flight attendants weren't making the same mistakes. He thought about CEO Hartley, who had chosen to embrace change rather than fight it. About Dr. Kim and her team, who had developed powerful training that actually worked. About the thousands of airline employees who had examined their biases and committed to doing better. About passengers like Patricia who had confronted their own prejudices. About young people like Keisha, who could now travel without fear. All of these people, all of these changes, had started with one terrible experience on one flight, but that experience had become a catalyst, a turning point, a moment that changed an industry. Marcus closed his eyes and finally felt at peace with what had happened. The humiliation had hurt. The accusations had stung. The doubt had angered him. But from that pain had come purpose. From that anger had come action. From that terrible moment had come lasting change. And that, Marcus thought, was how you transform a negative into a positive. Not by staying silent, not by accepting injustice, but by speaking up, by demanding better, by using whatever privilege and platform you have to lift others up. The flight attendant came by. "Can I get you anything, Mr. Chen?" "No, thank you," Marcus said. "I have everything I need." And for the first time in a long time, that was completely true.